So conscious flow state. So activity, rest. What does it take to, you can say, live in this range where we're experiencing, you say, a sequence in our life. We have presence and there's a sense of ease, a flow state. Okay. But when we get anxious or we're multitasking or we're trying to get things done, so we have time later, we have a sensing that life's a struggle, and say we're out of flow. And then if we're not having enough activity, the boredom may set in where we might feel like something's missing, or we might not be taking on enough. The past may matter more to us, and then we might become entangled with personal and worldly matters, which drags, you can say, our energy down. So what does it do? What does it do? What do we need to do to find the container of this flow state? So it's a matter of calibrating our own energy cadence. So our presence, our flow state presence, you can say, leads to a sense of meaningfulness and geniusness. So where we're in the flow state, we feel a sense of meaning, and lo and behold, insights, realizations come that before you didn't think of them, but because they're just ingenious is occurring. And part of that relates to what's happening in our heart. Okay. And as our heart is oriented, there's a compass in our heart that gives us a sense of what it takes to stay in a flow state, a sense of meaning, and we learn to continue in that way, and there's a greater experience of a flow state. So let's look at it in terms of a little bit more. So struggle. Now, struggle could be, initially when we're learning, say, Carol, learning more about cooking or technology and something we know we need to do, there could be a struggle initially. However, if we get stuck in what's called beta waves, where we're trying to work it out, if we get stuck in those what's called beta brain waves, then let's see if I can get this out of the way. Then cortisol, you've heard of cortisol and norepinephrine, adrenal hormones start to kick in, which causes our body to be under more stress. Okay, but we want to find release. We want to come into what's called alpha brain waves. And when alpha brain waves are engaged, there's something called nitric oxide that occurs where it opens up our blood vessels, opens up our system, where we feel a sense of relaxation. And where we find a conscious flow in daily living, the sequence of our living moment by moment. Now, that sets the stage for flow. And flow is when we're engaging with theta and gamma waves, and dopamine and endorphins are actually secreted into our system. And that's when we're engaged in total presence activities, creativity, ingeniousness, your works of art. So Helen, with you, with cooking, like that might be right now your total presence activities, or any activity that you think of where you're totally present. But you have to make space. You have to make space to so engage in order to actually be in that total presence activity. So like things you may want to, you're so drawn to do, you've probably already had the experience, but just look to see how on a daily basis you can create space for flow, where you're actually totally engaged in that activity of love, your work of art. And then time for recovery. Now, at times, we'll be in our presence activity, and then there might be a point where you need to finish that or stop before diminishing returns happens, before you overextend yourself. And that's where recovery comes in. So any time of the day, or especially during the week, is you need to engage what's called delta brain waves. And those delta brain waves allow for, you can say, your body to recover, allows for serotonin and oxytocin to be secreted into your system. And that relates to regenerative rests, relaxation, forms of endearment, hugs, touch, spiritual communion, okay, to make time. And so there's a flow cycle. So there's a flow cycle, you can say, moving past, engaging in something new, feeling the struggle of that, not being stuck in it though, finding release with the sequence of living moment by moment, and then making space to engage with things we totally love to engage with, and then having recovery time, part of the flow. So flow state, eudaimonia, which is a Greek term, well-being, of well-being. Well-being is not so much an outcome or an end state as it is a process of fulfilling or realizing one's daimon, or true nature. That is, of fulfilling one's virtuous potentials and living as one was inherently intended to live. And that was coined by psychologists DC and Ryan, where they look to explore further of what actually is a state of well-being, which relates to a flow state. Okay, so let's personally consider. So what does fulfilling my virtuous potentials mean to me? So if you have a pen or something to write on and some paper, let's consider that on our own right now.